My name is Foley. I spent 21 days in Tennessee and North Carolina volunteering after Hurricane Helene, and this is what I saw. This video is going to serve as an overview to my upcoming videos. While I was on my deployment, I took a lot of pictures and a lot of videos of everything that we did and everything that we saw. My phone got ran over halfway through the deployment. I was without a phone for about a week and a half. And so this is my replacement phone that I'm videoing on right now. Unfortunately, when I did the iCloud backup, all my footage was gone. So I'm working to get it restored, but I wanted to make this video first as an outline of everything that you're gonna see in the upcoming videos, because I promise you, it's a lot. Everything that we saw on our deployment was so destructive. Neighborhoods, valleys, mountains, trees, just gone. The destructive power of water is truly unimaginable. And even standing there, it was hard to fathom the damage that water could do. Not only did it tear apart the landscape, but it tore apart communities, tore apart houses, and tore apart families. But yet, it was the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen in my life. To see these communities come together with the volunteers and with people all over the country and all over the world to help and to make a difference was truly beautiful. There's really no words to describe the people that I met on this deployment. So I'll go into a quick overview of what I did in the area and how I spent my time volunteering. Before we can get into the juicy stuff, first we gotta go over how I got there. I've never volunteered for disaster relief in my life. I've never seen the things that I saw while volunteering. Simply, once this hurricane hit at the end of September, I was starting to see a lot of social media posts from people in the area showing the true devastation of this hurricane. I saw that no one was coming to help. I saw people desperately asking for anybody to come to these communities. And most importantly, I saw that the government or the big nonprofit organizations were not in the very heavily affected areas or these smaller communities. On October 13th, I decided to pack up my gear and head out east to go and help. I brought with me 2 trucks and 2 trailers, one truck with a 40-foot gooseneck, and on top of that, another truck meant for off-road recovery with a small military trailer that I used to transport supplies up rough roads into the mountains. The first 2 days of my deployment, I spent taking supplies up into the mountains of Tennessee, only about 5 miles from the North Carolina border. This was near a town called Mountain City. I drove supplies up into this community that was in a very steep valley, and what I saw truly shocked me. This entire valley had been washed out, homes were missing, the main road was almost gone, hanging on by a thread. Most of the driveways were washed out, and these people had not seen any help since before the hurricane. This was over a week after the hurricane hit, and they had not seen anyone from the government. They had not seen the Red Cross or any other nonprofit. Some of them were saying that the local sheriff's department and fire departments didn't even come up there, We were the first people outside of that community that they had seen in a week after this hurricane hit. In the 21 days that I was deployed there, this was one of the worst communities that I saw. I spent those 2 days driving supplies up into the mountains with my truck and my off-road military trailer, and spent a lot of time talking to the people of these communities. The people up there were truly incredible. It was a poverty area. No one was there to help, but yet they were so positive, so loving, and so kind to us. They had lost just about everything, and yet they were still asking us what they could do for us. It was truly incredible. There was these two brothers that lived in separate houses up in that community, and these people did not want to receive supplies. No matter how bad off they were, they always thought there was someone off worse and that they needed the supplies more. These two brothers came to us at different times without either of them knowing to pick up supplies for the other brother. They didn't want the supplies for themselves. They simply just wanted to help out their neighbors. I don't think once in that community I actually saw someone take supplies for themselves. But yet all of them came down and got supplies for all their neighbors. It was really interesting to see. After that, I headed back to base at Grindstone Ministries. It was the ministry I was volunteering for. And they informed me that they needed recon work done to find areas that were hard hit and where we could best allocate our resources and equipment that we had. I spent 4 days leading a group of truly amazing people over 850 miles through the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. From as far south as Burnsville to as far north as Creston and Lansing. What we saw in those 4 days, I don't have words for. Most of the interstates and highways were completely washed out. You could actually see where the interstate used to be. The water level was 40 feet below that, and yet there was debris 100 feet above the level of where the interstate used to be. It is truly incredible how much water flew through that area. We quickly started to notice that we weren't seeing anyone from FEMA, almost no one from the National Guard, no big nonprofit organizations. Really, the only people that we saw in these communities, and mind you, these are communities that were hit the worst in this hurricane. Only people we saw were small groups of volunteers like us that has somehow managed to find our way up in the mountains, and the locals themselves. Most of those miles spent were either on small 2-lane roads in the mountains or off-road logging roads or roads that were temporarily put in. It was really rough terrain. It was very hard to navigate. There was no cell service. We had satellite capabilities, but they were very spotty. They're not reliable. We got around by using maps, by using radios, and by using the locals themselves to tell us where to go. We would roll into these small towns. We went to hundreds of them. We would find either a local church organization or a local volunteer fire department and ask them what we could do to help. And that's the thing that seems so hard for people to understand, but yet was so simple. If you were to just show up to these communities, find a group of volunteers and ask them, hey, what can we do to help? Their is no shortage of work. It will take years, if not decades, to rebuild North Carolina and Tennessee and all the other states impacted by Hurricane Helene. But yet, very, very few people actually showed up that were willing to work, that were willing to put in a little bit of effort to help these people out. After 4 days of recon work, my team and I had managed to visit about 100 towns. We had talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, locals and volunteers. We had gotten contact information for about 50 people, and we had covered 850 miles. We took that information back to Grindstone Ministries, the ministry we were volunteering for, and the next day, the following few days, they sent equipment teams out with us with bulldozers, skid steers, and mini X's, and a few dump trucks to go into these communities and put roads back in, put culverts back in, put bridges back in, put driveways back in, anything that the water had damaged. This is just over 2 weeks after this hurricane hit, and we were just starting, or people was just starting to get together and get access back into these homes of the people that lived in them. Now, when we were running equipment, that is when I lost my phone. I had set it on the bed of my pickup. I was leading a convoy through the mountains. It fell off on a curb and got ran over by the entire convoy. It is not looking pretty. After that, it was kind of a blur. Everything was just moving so fast that the rest of the deployment kind of just all seemed to merge into one. I spent the rest of my days doing a multitude of things. I went to this one community named Creston. That was kind of the focus of my work up in North Carolina in the northern part. The day I showed up, I see this camper with a sign that was handwritten that said volunteer point. I pulled over on the side of the road, walked up to the camper, said, "Hey, my name is Foley. I'm leading a recon team. What can we do to help?" And she kind of laughed at me, a little smirk. The lady in charge, she said, "Well, right now we're just trying to figure out how to get hay into this community. There's a lot of ranches and a lot of farms up here who lost all their hay." Like, all right, we might be able to help with that. She's like, "Yeah, there's a lot that needs done. We need equipment, we need saws, we just need general laborers." Now, as you can imagine, for these people, it's hard to put trust into someone that just walks up and asks you how to help. A lot of people would go and ask how to help and never show back up. So you had to build that trust and that relationship with the local volunteers and also the locals themselves. So once I heard that she needed hay, I went back to base, grabbed my other truck with a 40-foot gooseneck, and I started driving around calling the local contacts that I had in the area, asking where I could get hay. And there was a small agricultural donation site about 30 miles away. I went there, kind of told them the situation. They loaded me right up with about 15,000 pounds of hay. I drove it straight back to that community and said, "Where can I put it?" From then on, I developed a relationship with the local people of Creston, and that started the foundation for the majority of my work while on this deployment. After that, I brought equipment teams back to Creston. We put in a bridge. We put in 3 driveways, I believe. I believe we did a culvert as well in that community. After that, I started running saws Grindstone Ministries needed sawyers to go out and clear some of the other properties that they had found. I ran a saw for a few days. After that, I ran mini X's and skid steers for a few days. I did just about a little bit of everything I could do. I even winched a car up a ravine out of a creek that had been washed down. Now, granted, this vehicle was never gonna be able to run again. It was packed up to the roof with mud. This is up in Mountain City, where I spent my first 2 days. I went back there. But the lady that owned the car had just told me, not really anything I need, but I just don't want to see my car in the river anymore. And the insurance won't come and look at it if it's not accessible. She's like, I don't want to bother you with it, but if you have extra time, I'd love for that to happen. So we winched a car out of the creek. That was pretty crazy. Now, the biggest hot topic about Hurricane Helene disaster relief is the organizations like FEMA, National Guard, the governmental organizations, and then also the nonprofits like the Red Cross and Samaritan's Purse. Now, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I can on these certain organizations. I'm going to tell you what I observed and what I saw. We'll start off with FEMA. FEMA, if you don't know, is the federal organization for disaster relief. Of the thousands of miles that I've driven, the hundreds of communities that I talked to, and even more people that I talked to, this is what I saw. FEMA was stationed in 2 towns that I had visited. One was a town named Creston, one was a town named Lansing. They're about 15 miles apart. In both places, FEMA had come with 3 or 4 people. They were there from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. I believe it was 2 or 3 days. They would show up with a white tent and a cooler full of water for themselves. And they would sit there and take in applications for the disaster relief checks. Now, out of about 500-600 people I talked to, about 50 people had signed up for these relief checks. And out of the 50 to 60 people I talked to that had actually applied through FEMA, through one of these sites, not a single person was accepted. Not a single person I met anywhere in either state have been accepted or gotten the $750 check. I don't know about you, but that's pretty sad to see. When FEMA did show up to these 2 communities, they did not help. They did not bring supplies with them. They just sit there and took applications. Now, a few days after this hurricane hit, there was reports of FEMA blocking donations and supplies coming into the areas. I can't confirm that. I did not see that with my own eyes. I did hear from quite a few people out there that they had witnessed that. Not really my place to say, just because I didn't see it with my own 2 eyes. What I did see, though, is a few days after this hit, and they supposedly were blocking donations, there was some militias threatening FEMA and the National Guard, blocking supplies, supposedly. And FEMA and the National Guard pulled out. It was either 3 or 4 days and this is only a few days after the hurricane hit. Everyone from those two organizations packed up and left the state. They did come back, but when FEMA did come back, they were accepting applications. The National Guard, which is on a state level, I saw them do some pretty good work. But the interesting thing is they were not organizing any sort of relief efforts. I saw the National Guard in 3 places. One of them was in Lansing, same place FEMA was in that one location. They were at a distribution site, not running it. It was actually ran by a 23-year-old woman. Amazing story. I'll tell you later. They were there hauling boxes back and forth between the distribution site and cars. Something that needed to be done. But like I said, they were not running it. They were not taking charge. They would just show up, say, you got a few laborers for however long. What do you want them to do? The second spot I saw the National Guard was near Burnsville. It was between Burnsville and Bailey. Can't remember exactly. This is where it was either a highway or an interstate. It had been completely washed out. You could very clearly see it was washed out because it was just gone. They were posted up at that intersection for what seemed like days. And from what I saw, they're either sitting in their truck or they're just standing outside next to it, telling people not to go down this road that was not a road anymore, just a cliff. Interesting. The third place I saw them was in Tennessee near Jonesboro, which is close to where I was stationed at. They had a fleet of dump trucks and a few skid steers, and they were cleaning up this one property, doing a mud removal. I will admit that was some pretty good work. Out of all the miles I've driven, all the communities I went to, those are the 3 places I saw the National Guard. The Red Cross, I saw them a few times. One was in Creston. I think that was the only time I actually saw them in person. But when they drop off supplies, they drop them off in big red buckets that says the Red Cross on it. And I did see those buckets in, I'd say, probably 5 to 10 communities. I didn't really know what was in them, but they were bringing supplies in. And then Samaritan's Purse, I saw them once also in Creston, funny enough. They were doing a muck out, which is essentially where they take all the mud out of a house that had been flooded. And then some of the time they will go through and cut all the drywall out at 4 feet and then take all the insulation out to prevent further molding. Come to find out, the one house in that community that they did a muck out on was actually abandoned. I think with those 2 organizations, the private nonprofits, the thing that I saw was when they were in a place doing work, they were doing pretty good work. But they were not very good at going to the places that needed help the most. I told you earlier, Creston needed a lot of help. They did. But we're talking about a vast community, and the one place that Samaritan's Purse was at was right off the main road. And there was a lot of cameras nearby. You'd see them, all these organizations in Asheville, where all the major media and news stations were. I didn't really see the Red Cross Samaritan's Purse anywhere that there wasn't media coverage. Now, while I'm on here, I want to spend a little time talking about the truly amazing people that I volunteered with while in Tennessee and North Carolina. I volunteered with a ministry called Grindstone Ministries. It was founded and is operated by a YouTuber named Bear Independent. I didn't get the chance to meet him, but from what I've heard, he's a truly amazing individual. And I thank him for putting so much of his time and effort into creating and sustaining this beautiful organization that truly helps a large amount of people. While at Grindstone Ministries, I've met a lot of people that I can call friends for the rest of my life. When you get deployed into something like this, you get deployed into a group of random guys, people that you've never met before. And only a few hours later, you are in the thick of some of the worst things that you'll ever see in this country. You very quickly develop a sense of brotherhood with these people. And I'm glad to say that after this deployment, I've gained a lot of lifelong friendships. The people that run Grindstone Ministries, the organizers per se, have been doing this for about a decade, some of them even longer. And it is incredible how well organized and how efficient they are. Now, granted, Hurricane Helene is something that none of us have ever seen before. Usually with another natural disaster like a tornado, the damage is somewhat centralized. It's all in one area. This hurricane left damage and destruction over hundreds, if not thousands, of square miles across multiple states. So deploying to something like this is not something you can prepare for, but yet they adapted so well to these conditions. Now, granted, there was some miscommunications. There's a lot of learning experience for everyone involved, but I think we learned a lot on how we can do things better and how we can organize an event like this. I truly thank the people of Grindstone. I took this experience as something I'll never forget. It truly changed the person that I am today. And I've learned more from those individuals than you can ever learn sitting in a classroom. As I mentioned earlier, I led a recon team out for 4 days. A group of 4 guys, including myself. Now I'll use nicknames in this that we came up with each other because I don't want to give out their real names. Didn't ask for permission for that one. First one, my right-hand man, my passenger princess is Peabody. I love you, man. Thank you for everything that you did for me, for keeping me safe, for telling me, hey, we probably shouldn't do that, and for always looking over my shoulder. I really appreciate you. Shep and Bridger and Truck 2, I really appreciate you guys. I learn more from you than I have most people in my life. Your wisdom and your experience has taught me skills that I'll use the rest of my life. Thank you. I worked with a group of guys from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They were nicknamed the Youper Troopers, naturally. These guys were extremely skillful with equipment. They did things that I've never seen done before. Very knowledgeable, very kind people. Thank you guys. It was a pleasure and a blessing to be able to roll around with you. The 2 guys from Wisconsin, they came down with 2 dump trucks, 2 trailers, 2 skid steers, and a bulldozer. Now, they were only able to stay for 2 days, but what they got done in 2 days was unbelievable. I've never seen 2 people that know how to run their own equipment like they did. They did things that I didn't think were even possible. Lastly, a YouTuber named Wrangler Star. Now, this YouTuber is the reason that I found out about Grindstone Ministries. He had mentioned it in one of his videos. I've been watching his videos for about 8 years now, and I've learned so much from that guy. If you're watching this, please go watch some of his videos. A lot of the stuff that I used on this deployment, whether it be equipment or knowledge, came from watching his videos. And some of the things I've seen have really, I can honestly say, saved my life. It got me out of sticky situations. He mentioned me in one of his videos after the deployment. Thank you. It truly means a lot, and I appreciate your kind words. I look forward to seeing what you come up with in the future, and I look forward to seeing your content. Lastly is everyone else that I volunteered with. There was 400 people or more that volunteered at Grindstone Ministries. At our peak, we had, I believe it was 109 volunteers on the base. And it was just mind-blowing what we could do with the amount of knowledge and the amount of care that these people brought to this hurricane relief. Thank you guys. You truly changed my life forever. Thank you to everyone that's watching this video. It really means a lot. I hope that I put some perspective into this hurricane and that my point of view from being on the ground somehow shapes your view on how this hurricane was handled. I really feel like I should say more. I don't really know what else I can say. I hope you guys enjoy these future videos where you can see all the work that we've done. Truly appreciate you all. For now, this is Foley, signing out.